Hello and welcome to the Birth Untethered podcast. I'm Shellie, a long-time doula, advocate and former university lecturer.
And I'm Kemi, a badass birth keeper, formerly a UK registered midwife.
Just a couple of rebels with decades of combined experience in pregnancy, birth and beyond getting together to share wisdom. We exist to equip birth workers, families and seekers of truth with informed choice, not fear. Come as you are, learn what they don't teach. This is the birth revolution and you're all invited.
Unfortunately, we had some quite serious technical issues with this episode, so apologies for the sound and visual differences, difficulties, etc. But what we were speaking about felt so important, so I have done my best to edit it together into something that makes sense.
Hello everybody and welcome from me, Shellie, and the beautiful Kemi for today's episode of the Birth Untethered podcast. It's so nice to see you. I just smile. I'm full of happiness. Anytime, we were saying earlier, weren't we, that spending time with people who appreciate birth and supporting birth in the way that feels right and good for people and makes it a whole round experience. It's not just an event or not just a thing to get through, but actually being in reverence of birth and being around people who feel the same way is very nurturing, especially in the current climate where it's sort of very witch hunty vibe going on, which is really challenging to deal with, especially when you kind of really see the bigger picture and realize that it's about controlling women, it's about reducing their power, not about actually the whole health of mothers and babies. Because when you look at the evidence, if you have loving, caring, wraparound support for women and babies, it makes it much safer and much better for them than what we're seeing in the medical industrial complex at the moment. I'm just very grateful for all the birth worky people out there who look after each other and form community. It's really important. And remember, we've got the Birth Untethered community. So if you'd like to come and join us for our monthly get together with like-minded souls, come and join us. Now, last time we were speaking about placentas and placentophagy, placentophagy, whatever you want to call it. Well, I've noticed that we say umbilicus differently as well, because you say umbilicus and I say umbilicus. So potato,
yes.
potato, tomato.
Yeah, well, it's the whole South London. It might be the South London thing. Let's call the whole thing off.
Let's just keep going forever.
I think it's good that there's a representation of pronunciation that varies between us.
I think so. It's one of those things, isn't it, that some people get very particular about how things are said or worded or phrased. In fact, my hubby has been very pedantic in his life, and as he's got older, he's like the grammar police, you know. And actually, it could be quite fun being the grammar police in a way.
Oh,
but
man!
Sort of started to realise, does it really matter? All words are made up anyway.
Really annoying. Thank you. Exactly. I'm not even sure how I feel about the English language.
Say it how you want. So yeah, we were talking about that, and then I promised that on this episode that we would speak a little bit about different traditions around placentas around the world, because I think in the West we have become very, well, science is God now. Medicine is God, isn't it? And we sort of lost traditions in a way and rituals. I think actually, yeah, it's just something that maybe we need a little bit more of.
Well, definitely humans, we've always needed to acknowledge the role that energetics plays in our lives to be healthy. So knowing the agenda of medicine, it's no surprise that they've stripped all of that knowledge out, burnt people for it and everything else. It's a missing piece and probably explains why we're the sickest we've ever been. So yeah, you know, here in Birth Untethered, we recognise the whole human and the role that energetics plays. So of course we're going to be talking about the more important things.
Bringing together of community and the sacredness of events where people come together and form that bonding. And what medicine and things have done is separate that. So we've taken birth out of being in the community and thing where people gathered and helped each other, and it was in the home, and it was local people that you knew caring for you, and we've separated out. And we've done the same thing with death, you know. But grandparents used to have all the family.
We have. And it's not accidental, folks. It's not accidental, folks. If you're a regular listener, you know I will always bring the big picture in. Like, it's not accidental that they've done all of these things. It's to separate you from each other. It's to separate you from your potential and from your longevity, to separate you from your health. And that is not accidental. It's an agenda. So what you can do is start to recover those things, recover your community, recover your health, your response to energetics, your acknowledgement of it.
Thinking it back to the placenta and that separation, that immediate like clamping and cutting and separation of the placenta that we do in the West because of what medicine thinks. We know that there are absolutely no high quality clinical trials or systematic reviews about separating a placenta and or about keeping a placenta together. So there are medical concerns documented and theoretical risks around keeping a placenta attached until it detaches itself. Their potential risks are infection and umphalitis, which I'm just saying that because I love that word. It sounds a bit like
umphalitis. Go on, explain. We agree on the pronunciation of that, by
like
the way.
An Oompa Loompa.
So explain what it
really is. An inflammation. Itis is like inflammation around the umbilical cord stump, the umbilical cord stump. The
umbilicus. The umbilicus.
So
umbilicus.
And the potential for transfer of bacteria or sepsis going into the baby. So that's quite an interesting one for me, because if doctors say to people, well, there's nothing coming from the placenta after 30 seconds, we need to clamp and cut it, why would there be a potential for transfer of infection from a placenta attached if there wasn't anything still potentially transferring? Bit of a... Hold on a second. Let's just have a little think about that one. The other concerns that medics have are around jaundice and polycythemia. So polycythemia is really where we've got, I'm going to do air quotes here, for too many red blood cells in the body. So if the baby is allowed to have all of their blood, okay, part of the natural process of happening, like we spoke about last time, babies in utero have more of a particular type of hemoglobin in their blood, because the oxygen saturation of the blood is different in utero to when the transition of the circulation comes over to them bringing air into their lungs rather than getting their oxygen and getting rid of their carbon dioxide through the umbilical cord. So they have more than they need, and there's a process of them breaking down, being excreted through the digestive tract. So that's why being close and having skin to skin and feeding, effective feeding, is important, because it helps that. And we get what Kemi's been speaking about in previous episodes as well, is physiological jaundice. So part of that process of breaking down the red blood cells can increase the bilirubin,
which is the waste product from breaking down.
And so that is then excreted through the digestive tract in the body, or sometimes it can come out in skin. Skin is a thing of elimination, so that's why we can see that yellowing. The digestive tract is not quite keeping up with things, but it's quite a normal part of the process. If it's not pathological, if the baby is still feeding well and alert and things like that, then it's not something to be concerned about. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because after the placenta has drained all of the blood into the baby, it's after birth of the placenta, it is non-viable tissue. Okay, and so the medical concern is that it become a nidus for bacterial growth and infection. But what we spoke about last time is we know that those blood vessels are closing down. So the arteries close very quickly, so that's blood flowing back out to the baby. And the vein also closes, but a little bit slower. And as Kemi was saying, that, if you wait for a few hours after birth, usually you can cut the cord without any kind of blood flow at all. So in medical, in the kind of logical thinking, they're thinking, well, there's nothing more good happening of that attachment being there. And so that's why you can clamp it and remove it. But in other cultures, there are different thoughts around that. what the importance of the placenta is and keeping it, maybe not necessarily attached to the baby, but doing some sort of ceremony with it to recognize and honor the role that the placenta has played in growing your baby and keeping them alive. I'm going to talk about a few little different traditions here. It's often treated as sacred, powerful, and in some cultures actually dangerous, and that has to be handled in a very specific way, because people often think that it's like a spiritual connection or connects babies to the ancestors or to the land and the energy of that, and so it has to be handled with respect, not just thrown in a medical waste bag, but something done with that. You don't want to anger the spirits in many cultures by disrespecting this organ that has grown and kept your baby. So in the Maori tradition, the word, which I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of, I'm really sorry, but it's spelled Whenua, and I think it said something like behuna, and it's a Maori word that means both land and placenta, which is interesting, isn't it?
It's amazing.
Because I suppose it's grown the baby, hasn't it? Like the land grows and sustains and nourishes us, which is really beautiful. And in traditionally there, the placenta is returned to the land and buried in a place of ancestral connection. So there is a spiritual link between the child and the earth where they're born, and that's an important practice there that's recognised. And it's similar in other parts of the world actually. It's in Bali and Indonesia. The placenta is called again I may say this wrong, it's Ari, so Ari maybe is how it's said, I'm not sure, is wrapped, ceremonially wrapped, often in cloth, sometimes in a coconut shell, and then it is either buried or hung from certain trees in the village in a placental graveyard. And this also is connecting the child to the local protective spirits. Some other places around the world, including in Hmong, Vietnamese, and many indigenous American and Pacific cultures, also bury the placenta to bind the child's spirit to the land, so it remains connected to the ancestors and the place of their birth, which I think is really beautiful. And it's sometimes thought of as a spiritual jacket or a guardian of the baby, and that they want to then connect that with the ancestors, so we're getting that intergenerational connection. And we were speaking about that, weren't we, the traditions and the information about birth being passed down, and it sort of ties in with that birth is an ancestral thing that connects us, life and death and the circle of life going on. It's really made me think about I'm just going to sling that out with the rubbish about placentas.
Or I'm going to exploit it by selling it for many thousands of pounds, which also is going to attract very negative energy to the people that do that. So, when recognising our interconnectedness and the actions that we visit on each other, people are going to need to start to really get with the idea of the kind of stuff we're doing with people's stem cells, with people's placentas, etc. I think we're going to have a grown-up conversation about this for our society is ongoing, about the way that we treat people and their things.
I really see the difference in how people are treated during their birth, and it's really reflecting for me to think, because I hadn't, being a birth nerd, I kind of get about placentas, but when Seb was born, though I was birth nerding, I wasn't to the extent that I am now, and I wasn't really that interested in his placenta. I was like, no, I don't really want to look at that right now. Actually, what I want to look at is my lovely baby. And I'm really glad that Simon took an interest, and I feel like he had a reverence for the placenta and did things like that. But I was really just no, not interested. It's made me reflect these last few episodes, so I'm really grateful for this conversation that we've been having. Actually.
Me too. I love the energy of this conversation and the knowledge that's being shared, and I equate it now to the way our society is taught to discard of our menstrual blood, that it has no energy in it, it has no value in it, it's a waste product. That's societal conditioning again.
But they found a lot of stem cells recently in placental blood.
That's right, exactly. Even us recovering our reverence for our menstrual flow. I think, you know, as bad as it gets on this planet is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
There's some really good things that are happening.
We've got the ebbs and flows. We've got the ebbs and flows. So what we're going to do now is have a really beautiful guest on. She's called Amelia, and both Kemi and I have looked after her in her births. So Kemi looked after her for her first birth, and I looked after her for her second birth. And she is an artist, really stunning artist. Actually, we'll make sure that we share her Instagram in the show notes so that you can look at it. Just like ethereal, beautiful drawings, and my gosh, I mean, they make my heart soar when I see them. These sort of otherworldly, wonderful things. So we're going to have Amelia on, and she's going to tell us about how she achieved not one but two physiological births, what her tips and tricks are, what was important for her, and she also will touch a little bit on what she did with her placenta. Welcome, Amelia, to the Birth Untethered podcast with me and Kemi. It's really cool to have all three of us in a space, actually, because our paths have intersected together at different times. You know, this would have been the dream team, all three of us together for births. We tried to get Kemi there second time, didn't we?
I know, thank you so much. I can't believe, It's interesting actually, because I felt like with my two children's different births, it almost was like I needed different energies for each one, because I think each one is like a different initiation for each woman. You know, whatever you go through, in a way, there's going to be lessons for you in that. It was interesting because with my second child, my daughter, when I was tuning in, I was like, oh my God, and what am I going to do? Do I want Kemi again? Because obviously I had Kemi with my first little boy. But I was like, I feel like maybe I'm going to free birth, or maybe. And then I kind of went down this whole thing. And then I was thinking of you, Shellie, and I was like, do I want Shellie as a doula? And there was a whole kind of different tuning in.
Yeah, I probably would have been demanding more attention than you were getting, Amelia. So.
Was that a big part of your process for achieving, you know, because I think we need to really celebrate when people achieve physiological births, you know, because so few people are managing it these days, and it would be really lovely to be able to give people tips and information about how you achieve that, so other people can take that away and think, okay, does that resonate with me? Is that something that I want to explore? Does that feel good for me? And so you are really a very intuitive person, very, you know, you really feel a lot of things, sit with a lot of feeling. I'd love for you to just talk about that a little bit, sort of what you felt with your first birth, with your second birth, and what drew you, and what you felt you wanted to step back from as you were going through. Did you think about things before you were pregnant, or was it sort of once you were pregnant?
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. I could talk about this for hours. I think it was when I turned like 29, and suddenly I was like, oh my God, my spirit babies are around and I need to be a mum. And it was like something turned on, and I just was like, okay, motherhood, I want, like, this is coming in. And I'd been with my partner for a long time. And I think I kind of said to him, like, right, I'm ready to be a mum now, like the babies want to come. And so he kind of went on his own journey. But then I started looking into how, you know, conception, and I'm a really spiritual person as well, but I do also really like research, and I obviously had a lot of the kind of cultural fear that I think a lot of people have. So of the women that I knew who'd had children and babies, obviously, sadly, there had been lots of trauma and it wasn't really great, their kind of birthing baby situations. So I think I kind of started on this, and it probably was podcasts. I started initially every day at work, basically, just listening to podcasts. I was working in fashion design, so I didn't really have to talk. So I had my podcast on all day, and I would just listen to podcasts from like midwives and doulas and even obstetricians, and the whole spectrum, because I just wanted to, I felt like I could quench my fear basically with learning. But it was interesting because as I was then going on this journey, it was very much like I was tuning into my like feelings on it all, being like, oh, I want to have these babies. And that was very kind of intuitive. But I started to kind of have these visions of like, if I imagined how I would give birth. And for my first little boy, whenever I tried to imagine it, I could always just see, like, we live in a cottage. It was like I was in front of the fireplace, and like that's where I imagined giving birth. But then my logic brain would come on and I'd be like, oh, okay, oh God, I don't know. Okay, that's at home. Like, I don't know. And then but what was really cool was as I was, listening to some of the stuff, and then I think I think I found you first on Instagram, Kemi, and I started consuming stuff on Instagram as well. And I started realizing that actually all of the kind of data actually was backing up what I was feeling intuitively of like, oh, I think I want to have a home birth. And like, I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is actually really cool. My kind of sort of intuitive feeling is actually aligning with the kind of medical statistics. But then I also started to realize, kind of through this process, I we got pregnant, and then I actually had two miscarriages before my first little boy was born. Um, but actually, it's really interesting because they were really like transformational processes for me. Um, because I felt like when I was pregnant, again, I ended up learning all about like spirit babies because I really felt like I started to connect with the souls of my babies, really. I was having like dreams and things. And also I was obviously physically pregnant. But I then started engaging in the NHS system, and so I would like go to my midwife appointments and stuff. And that's where I think I first started feeling the kind of discordance, where I was like, oh, this is anyway, I don't really like hospitals. I hate like bright lights and that whole kind of stressful environment. But I definitely felt also like my people pleaser thing coming on where I'd be like, okay, yes, 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 okay, and kind of doing things maybe that I didn't feel like I really wanted to do. So yeah, this whole process was really interesting because I basically ended up that I was pregnant for like a year and a half because I had this first miscarriage, which was like at 12 weeks. Then I waited a little bit, and then I had 7 weeks, and then obviously with my little boy, I had that I was pregnant with him. So I was pregnant for a really long time, but again, it gave me this time to be like learning and researching. And yeah, I hope people don't mind me talking about that. Obviously, I know it's really sad for lots of people, but actually, I went through this process, and it kind of really yeah, it connected me with my babies. I kind of felt like I was growing their body. And actually, when I had the losses, it wasn't like they had died. It was just like maybe there was something not quite right with that body or not quite right with that timing. And that I needed to go through that process of learning. And for me, that actually involved, I don't know if you want me to go into all of this with the,
I really do, Amelia. I think that people are
yeah,
very frightened to talk about miscarriage, and it's very silenced
yeah,
and this kind of taboo, and
yeah,
that it's kept behind closed doors. And often people
yeah,
don't even have the opportunity to say to anyone. And the culture is
yeah,
very much like, well, don't tell anyone you're
yes,
pregnant before 12 weeks in case you
yes,
lose it, and then you have to tell everyone. But actually,
yeah,
you're going through something really massive
yeah,
and a loss,
yeah,
and you lose the what ifs, you are pregnant and you
yeah,
probably are envisioning things that are going to be happening with your baby. And
yeah,
yes, you can have the medical side that say, well, it wasn't viable, things weren't working, the body wasn't quite right, there was some genetic thing that the body's gone, well, it's not quite right, so let's not have it work. But that doesn't take away from the spirit and the soul that you feel. So it's really lovely to hear, actually, and really important, I think, for people to hear about your experience of that. So please do. Thank you.
What was really interesting is that the way that it happened, particularly with the first one, um, was that so when I thought I'd started miscarriaging, it was a weekend, and I was actually working because, as I said, I worked in fashion, so it was a bit mental. But we ended up going to the hospital. But because I was under 12 weeks, you just have to go to A&E. So I was like waiting in A&E, and my partner came and joined me. Anyway, we were basically there for a few hours, and obviously there wasn't really anything they could actually do. But they would keep seeing me and then sending me back, and then da 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 da. And I think it was like 11 p.m. at night, and we just were like, why are we here? There's nothing that because I was like, am I having a miscarriage? Am I not? And obviously really, really emotional. But anyway, we basically ended up going home. And like, I'll probably tell the full story another time. But I basically had the miscarriage at home in my bathroom, and it was amazing. And like, that sounds really weird to say, but actually, I just had, when we were at the hospital, I just was like, I can't go to the loo and have this happen here, and I have to go home. And actually, for my husband to witness me, it was basically this, like, an an experience of birth in a way. And I think he then saw me in this primal state, and that was quite a lot for him to process. But I think not in hindsight, he had to see me in that, like, you know, birthing basically at home in this way, to then be prepared to hold me later when I literally, especially with my little girl's birth that we just had, when it was just the two of us, where I was literally squatting and birthing her. It was like he was able, because he'd seen that. And then I also went through this profound experience, which I never had before, where I felt this sense of like all of the women with me, like the ancestors were with me when I was birthing. And it was, what I realized was, as women, we birth life and death. You know, this is what we do. This is the womb. It's, you know, we can't, you have to surrender to nature. And obviously we, you know, there's free will involved and we can do these different things. But in that situation, it felt like all I could do
That's
was choose to be
right.
at home in my environment, and have it happen there. And it just was like, honestly, I felt like I could process it so much better. And then the next day we did like a little ceremony in the garden where we put the blood in the garden and everything. And obviously it was, like you said, really emotional. And because I was like
Yeah.
desperate to become a mum. Like, I think, I don't know, I think lots of women get there where suddenly your hormones and you're just like,
Yeah.
and because I hadn't had any children yet, and I had them before I'd had my first little boy, there was this whole thing I had to make peace with, of like, am I never going to be a mom? And, you know, and that whole thing. I kind of feel like I've been building up confidence. I was just saying to you guys before we started, that I want to also share a bit about my journey with like honoring those miscarriages and the blood, and just like simple things of like little prayers and candles and things that you can do that really help me have closure on that. Yeah, and
Oh,
for me, and
yes.
actually that's when I found, there's this book called Spirit Babies, by this like psychic. So again, it's quite woo-woo, but that really helped me. I think I was listening to lots of kind of more mainstream podcasts about miscarriage, and it didn't feel like it was helping me as much as then this sense of thinking, okay, like I do believe in the spirit and the soul, and that we are physical and spiritual. And that kind of really helped me process. Um, yeah. But then back to your original question. So I was kind of, then we were still on this pregnancy journey. And actually, I will say, like you were saying, Shelley, that thing of how nobody really knows you're pregnant because it's the first trimester. I
Yeah.
found that really hard, because I also hate the first trimester because I get so sick and I just feel like shit. And it's, for me, the work. And I was like, oh my God, I had 3 first trimesters in a row. By the second time, I was just like, I don't care. I'm just going to tell people I'm pregnant, because it's so weird how it's only really like the third trimester where you're obviously pregnant, you know? And so it's not a very long period of time. So I was like, I'm just going to tell people I'm pregnant, because I always think
For
the first
real.
trimester is where you really need the most help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you
Um,
need the support because you're feeling
yeah,
awful. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right.
Oh, working was so. I told my boss straight away, because I was just like, I have to explain why I'm not on form. Back to the original question of like dealing with the NHS and stuff, that was really interesting, because there wasn't space for any of this there. You know, there wasn't any of that kind of processing there. I was like very intuitively, I didn't have a D&C or anything afterwards. I was like massaging my tummy, and I had some raspberry leaf tea and all these things. And it just was like, it felt like, oh, this was better at home. Like nothing weird happened. So this was so much better being at home, because I could just, you know, rest my nervous system and all those things. So yeah, and so basically then when I was pregnant with Albie, who's my little boy, um, I think I'd had this time where I'd been like listening to these podcasts, and I think I'd found, and then I think I found you as well, Shelley. And I just love both of you, that you were so like with the information, like how Kemi's just like calling out all the triggers. And I was like, I need to work through this. And then how Shelley had all her like hilarious videos of like, what, and it's like actually awful, but also funny. And I was going through these things where you'd be like,
Yeah.
and I just started becoming obsessed. And it was so interesting, because my whole life really is like, as a as an artist and designer, by the themes I've always been interested in is the feminine and the goddess. And what I realized was like, this is like the biggest deepening of my work, because that transition from maiden to mother, and like actually embodying and experiencing all the changes you go through, and then like the gift of creating a life through your womb. It was just a big, big, big womb initiations. And And it's so interesting when you're going through such a big, like, spiritual transformation as well as physical one. And then the people that you're meant to engage with to help you, that's not a factor at all. Um,
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
just a
and
uterus, aren't
yeah,
you? I mean, really, this is the thing. It's medicine so individual, like take things down that you are not even a human. You're not even a family. You're literally
yeah,
just a vessel that is carrying a
yeah,
baby, and that you are just demonstrating here with the way that you're so
yeah,
beautifully speaking about your experiences of how important that is, that integration of
yeah,
losing babies, and
yeah,
how that's not cared for in a holistic
yeah,
way to help
yeah,
you to integrate that into your experience and your life, and that
yeah,
how you have managed that, you've gone out and sought that from other places, and that it has helped you grow in this most
yeah,
beautiful, amazing way, and grow in your power, in your intuition, in your
Yeah.
understanding, in your art. I mean,
No.
it's just
No.
I'm gonna have to stop talking, so I'm gonna start
Yeah.
like crying. It's just so
And
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I love talking about it. I'm like, oh, there's so many tangents. I did get addicted to watching like birth videos and listening to birth stories, and basically, having said everything I said, I had all this kind of like connection going on intuitively, but I did also have all of this programming of fear that I had to work through periodically, and so I think consuming your guys' information and data really helped, but I then was like, okay, the gist of it for me, who's like, I'm not trained as a like, traditional midwife even, I was like, the gist that I need to know is like oxytocin. Basically, I need to support the oxytocin. And so all the things I love, like, stroking my dog and having fairy lights and having lovely music and like the things that I'm imagining, that's what I need to support oxytocin. So that's exactly what I'm going to go for. But what was really interesting was because every time I would go to my NHS like midwife appointments, I didn't really like the midwife that I had. But it was funny because we had basically continuity of care through the pregnancy, but then obviously in the birth, you don't. So I was kind of like, I actually thought it was opposite of being beneficial. I was like, I'd rather meet all the different midwives to know which midwife you're going to have for the birth because like that doesn't make sense. Anyway, at this point I started being like, yeah, I'm not gonna give birth in the hospital. And I think I did say to them I want to have a home birth and they were like, oh, okay, well maybe, but you can plan that at 36 weeks. What? Okay. um so at this point is when I started thinking, okay, I don't know, I actually think it's not really going to work, like being at all in the system. And actually, I think I was chatting to my mother-in-law, and luckily she's also quite like, open-minded and, questions everything. And I was sharing with her everything I've been learning about birth and stuff. And so she like really sweetly offered to help us to get a birth keeper, or well, at that point we were like, is it an independent midwife or is birth keeper, or and she was like, yeah, this is really important. Again, I'd asked all these women in my life about their birth stories, like my mother-in-law and my mom and everything. And it was just so fascinating because I just feel like for a lot of people, you don't really know anything about birth until like you're pregnant because we're just not exposed to it. We don't live in a village. I didn't even really know, or at least think about the fact that you give birth to the placenta after the baby. You just were like, you give birth to a baby. Long story short, I found Kemi and I was like, I need Kemi. I was like, especially because I can be actually very kind of like, I had that people pleaser aspect of me which I've been having to slowly sort of kill through through this process of being which which I felt like, because I feel like in a mum you have to be able to say no. So I actually started doing it in midwife appointments where they'd be like, do you want this blood test? Do you want, and I would just be like, feel in. And actually, I did have some of them. And then some appointments, I'd be like, I don't really want to have a blood test. So I would just say no. And they'd be like, what? And I would kind of practice. And it was really awkward for me. Basically, that formed the frame of how I then even did my second pregnancy, where I kind of engage with the system and I kind of don't, because I take what feels good for me. So I did actually have scans with them, and I think some of that was because I'd had the miscarriages. It gave me a lot of, I was like, oh, okay, yes, there is a baby there, and like I liked the kind of pros and cons. Felt more beneficial for me, and it made it more real for my husband as well. But I started to mostly things like, the blood test where I was like, actually, I feel good. Or if I have one, I don't need another one. So I'm good. So just beginning to assert, because I knew from listening to all you guys and like the Midwife's Cauldron and things like that. And like, I started reading some amazing books as well. I was like, I'm allowed to say no. This isn't actually a legal requirement, even though they don't frame it like that.
Yeah.
And so the same with the birth, I just went along, and with the second one as well, even though I was like, my plan isn't to call them, my plan isn't to go to hospital, but I like to have, I'll keep them that I've got that option, but actually I'm going to make my own plan. It is hard for women nowadays because it's not even easy doing that. It's so everyone's having to navigate this world, and it is difficult, but I do think it's worth it because this is for your baby's arrival, like their initiation into life, like they're welcoming their first experience of this reality. And also it's for your, I just feel like my postpartum experience, everything was so much smoother because nothing was interrupted. It was just following this flow. And there is an aspect, I think you do have to really choose hard choices because we live in this modern world. I'm still connected with like my old school friends, which is really nice. And obviously we're all doing quite different things now, but we had Christmas lunch thing and we all got together, which was really nice. And one of my friends, I'd said that I was planning to have a home birth, and she was like, oh my God, she hadn't had children yet, but she was like, and she was like, Amelia, no, that's so dangerous. I'm so scared for you. Please don't, please don't. So she wasn't trying to shame me. She was really coming from genuinely scared, but it was really, oh my God, like, the feelings that it brought up, like in front of my friend, and like luckily one of my friends had a baby and she'd actually had a C-section, but she had learned a lot about birth and stuff, and so she really sweetly was like, no, it's actually a really good, it's a really good choice. It's just really interesting because there were many of those. Even my mum, I've got 3 siblings, so she'd had a home birth and then she'd had an accidental free birth actually with my brother, but she was like, no, darling, not your first baby. You've got to have your first one in the hospital. And I was like, no, Mum, you don't, and I don't want to start with that. So you do have to choose what you tell and how strong if you feel that you can tell people and know that they don't know what you know.
Lovely.
And what's right for you, or just not tell people everything, be like, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think I did that. I played dumb a little bit with the system and with other people where I'd be like, I'm hoping to have a home birth, even though I'm like, unless something really bad happens and I have to like phone the ambulance and I'm like properly bleeding out, I'm having a home birth. Like, and I did think there was a process you have to go in as well of like a bit going back to with my miscarriages, this aspect of the deepest fear, at least that came up for me, was that death thing of like of my baby dying. And I think this is just like when you're pregnant, that's just going to come up. But what I was, when I was reading and I was thinking and just feeling into that, it was like, would I, this cannot be eradicated. And would I rather that's going to happen at home in a peaceful environment or in hospital? And it's like, I'm not necessarily going to get to choose what happens. I don't know, what choices you're going to make in the process of birth, but I don't know, that's obviously a personal decision for everybody. But I also felt like I also would want that experience of death to be peaceful, like I had with my miscarriages, if that was, and I didn't want it to be like that, but I do think no matter what, pregnancy is shadow work and you have to face those fears. And it was interesting because I had different fears in each pregnancy. Like, even though I had this amazing home birth with you, Kemi, with my little boy, when I was pregnant recently with my little girl, it was like different fears came up that I didn't have with him. This time I had this fear about like, oh my God, what if she can't breathe? Like, what if she can't breathe? And so I had to go and start reading about like, okay, what are like basic things, rubbing the baby's feet and like sucking their neck, and just, you can't completely get rid of the fear. It's just going to be there, because there's no way to like guarantee. I mean, there's probably some things you could do that would make it more likely, but you're also like, where do you draw the line between trauma and being in
sitting in the discomfort, I think, and we've sort of touched on this in previous podcasts, that actually the rite of passage of going through pregnancy and birth It is
Yeah.
teaching us things and bringing up things for us that are going to be repeated in a pattern throughout our lives.
Yeah.
Being a parent basically is sitting in discomfort the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always some worry about something, about the state of the world, about, your child's friends and their influence on them, about what your child's going to do with their life, and are they going to be happy and satisfied and enjoy things. So it's like this, it's just like a practice of sitting in that discomfort. And what do I do with that? What do I do with that? Do I explore things that can help? Do I realize and recognize that I can tell things to certain people, but other people are not a good space to reflect, and they're not going to be helpful for me in reflecting in this discomfort and sitting with it. They're not going to give me good advice. They're just going to bring their fear and their prejudices, and that's not helpful for me at this time. Sometimes you can take people's fear and prejudice and you can say, okay, yeah, you feel that way, but actually I found this, and you can use it to teach them. But sometimes your energy is not in a state where you can do that, and actually you need to protect yourself. So it's discovering that, and it's such a path of discovery. And like you say, that death of a maiden, where you're just responsible for yourself and not having to think about other people, and this birth of you as a mother, and that responsibility for the other children, your children. And it's really, you're just describing it so beautifully, your journey here and your thought process. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, a big thought I'm just thinking what you were saying there was also like navigating with my partner and his fears, and then and actually the first pregnancy was amazing. He was like super supportive, and kind of, I think I chose a few of my favorite podcasts and I got him to listen to those. And then he did this evening class. Actually, it was literally one evening, by, what was it? It was the
Was it
Ultimate
Betty?
Birth. Betty, yeah, on the Ultimate Birth Partner. Oh my God, it was amazing. He literally came up for that, and he like knew all the different stages of birth, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you're right, oxytocin." Da, da. I was like, "Great," and then Kemi will vouch for, like, he was so amazing, like supporting me through the birth, and I think because we had Kemi there, he was like, he also felt confident with all of that.
I'm
Um,
just thinking the ultimate birth partner isn't Betty, is it? It's our Sally Ann.
Sally.
Is
Oh,
Sally Ann?
okay. I
Who
did
did
listen to
Betty's
I
course?
listened to Sally Ann's podcast, and then
Okay,
he did
did both.
Betty's course. So
Okay, so you've had both Sally Ann and
I'm getting
Betty.
the
My
mixed up.
goodness, what a powerhouse of support you guys have
Um,
had. Yes.
and actually my favorite, well, obviously you guys are not my favorite podcast, but another one is called Birth a New Story, which is so beautiful. And there's actually a lot of male stories. So if you are
Lovely.
wanting your partner to listen to stuff, there's beautiful male stories on there. But it was interesting because with my second pregnancy, I had a lot of this fear of death coming up with my daughter, and I think it's because I'd felt like my daughter was the two miscarriages, and so there was a kind of more like spiritual things coming through, but I couldn't really talk to my husband about it because he was getting quite upset about me having to bring that of like, maybe, this fear of her dying, and so that's where I can actually, I think, having other women who you can talk to, or like you guys with the power hours, or people that you can actually talk to. And if your partner can't hold you, which very often probably they can't, like, when you're, because it's a woman's world, like what we're talking about, this, and we're the ones who are connected. They are connected to their babies, but it's just different. And I think having people that you can go in to those fears with, but who aren't going to just be like, oh my God, or shame it or make it worse, but actually, like, you guys can provide the data and be like, well, even the statistics of this, or actually the best thing you could do for that is this. And you're like, okay, this is, yeah. So there was a lot. I had a mother's blessing actually with my little girl, and that whole thing was so beautiful. But the night before we did this, I had some of my friends were staying, and that ended up accidentally turning into this processing session for me, where I shared with them about these fears, and they just held space for me to be able to go into it. And I then kind of came back to my own realization of, again, it was kind of this ancestral thing of feeling like all of these women before me have done this, and I can call on my baby. This is her journey too, and that, all of my grandmothers and all of, and all of her father's mothers and lineage, and I just be like, this, we're going to do this, and just trusting yeah, it was less clear with the second pregnancy because it wasn't till the end, I think, Shelley, that I confirmed you, because I
Very
just
good.
I didn't have the clear vision like I'd had with the fireplace, but I just really lent into, I was like, you know what, I've got all the options. I'm like, I'm just gonna feel what feels good. And then I just had like the quickest birth ever with her. It was so funny. Um, but yeah, it was amazing. So it's just so important what you guys are doing and literally changing so many lives. It's just, yeah, it's amazing. It's
We
huge. So.
try.
It's a lot. It's a lot more than I expected to be doing. You know, us being a part of mothers that have had physiological births, sharing their stories. I think your words and your experiences, even the codes coming along with your voice, is so important for mothers.
The first birth I had a fear about tearing, but then I read about that and it was like, okay, better to naturally tear than to cut. Da, da, da. Anyway, and I didn't tear in either of my births. And I think it was the leaning into cultivating my intuition which helped, because it meant when I was in birth, I could feel, and I could feel when I needed a minute and then when I could push. So what I realised was in both of the births, I ended up essentially squatting. So I think on the first one, I was hanging off you, Kemi, like squatting down. And then with the second one with my little girl, it was actually in the bathroom this time. And I was kind of like, had one arm on the radiator and then I was kind of like squatting. And so I actually think things like that are probably the best things, you know, the kind of, when I was labouring, I was doing lots of like kind of hip rotations and things. And I just think the best things probably just do nice things, go on walks and do like Pilates and yoga and stuff, and then just listen to podcasts, maybe read some books. I didn't actually end up reading that many books. The books that I got as well were more like sacred birthing and the spiritual side of things again.
Because you see yourself as much bigger than just the body. You understand who you really are. Your soul that's in a body.
Just cross-legged stretching and kind of just, I guess, strength. I think that really helps with birth stuff. The process of giving birth to my first little boy really like deepened this understanding of our wombs essentially as these interdimensional portals, basically, where we are growing their bodies and able to receive their spirit, you know, and that's how I feel. And so another thing I did in both of their births was writing my own birth affirmations, which again were very kind of grounding me into that spiritual thing of like, I am connected to my ancestors, my womb is a cosmic portal and all of these things. And so actually then with my little girl, that I had so much creativity coming through me, because again there's all of this amazing sort of feminine mystery beliefs around our wombs being the anchor of our feminine creativity. So for creating new life, but also for just connecting to the cosmic Mother Earth wisdom. And I definitely felt that, especially with my second child coming on, where you just feel so creative. And it's difficult because when you're a mum, obviously you're busy, so you don't have that much time. But it's been like so much creative stuff coming through. I've been working on making some affirmation cards for conscious conception. I've got too many at the moment. I need to tailor it down because I've got a whole thing on conscious conception, a whole thing on pregnancy, and then a whole thing on birth. And I'm like, can I do 3 sets?
Yes. We can't wait till they're released. keep us in the loop. We want to know.
Yay!
Yeah. But I know we wanted to talk a bit about placenta, and actually that kind of links with a lot of that really, because what I felt really strongly, one of the books I read when I was first pregnant, it's called The Placenta of the Forgotten Chakra, and it's super beautiful, and it just really connected with this whole concept of the womb being this interdimensional portal, and that your placenta is like the plug. And that's how I kind of envisioned it as well, that it's like the placenta is this tree of life, this literal plug that's able to connect, obviously, you know, all of the nutrients and the blood and everything like that for growing the actual vessel, but also the baby's soul through pregnancy is gradually getting in more and more and more into your baby. And then the process of birth is this final arrival into 3D world, and that the placenta just deserves so much honouring for being that tether. It was actually funny because I was thinking about how the podcast is called Birth Untethered, and I was thinking how it's because you guys are talking about untethering from all of these false attachments that have been put onto us and like being in your sovereignty, but there is actually this tethering back to Mother Earth and our bodies and that the placenta is that. It's the placenta that's the tether, no rules, no other things. And that's the one that, and there's so much we could talk about there. I'm just like, I think you guys have spoken about it in the last podcast as well, all the different things you can do. There's so many things. But the main thing that I think I'd want people to know is just, no matter what, your placenta is not medical waste. Like, even if you don't want to do anything with it, you at least want to just thank it. And there's lots of different indigenous beliefs that the placenta is literally part of the soul family of that baby. One of the beliefs is that it's even the body of the baby's guardian angel, which is so beautiful. And that my beautiful friend Emma, who's also free birthed her baby and she's amazing, we were talking about this the other day, and she was saying how she was so moved by her placenta, how it was like this placenta had died for them. That process of birth was a bit like what we were saying of this balancing in nature. Your baby's born and essentially the placenta dies, and that you need to thank that, like, this amazing organ that's been this intermediary between you and your baby.
Its whole existence is to bring life to your baby. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
That's right. And then if you imagine, because you've got the meaty side of the placenta attached to mother, but then you've got the other part of the placenta, which is the amnion and chorion, envelops the baby. It's a guardian also. It's a neat trick of fooling us into thinking that all the placenta is medical waste. It's genius, actually, because it separates us from the truth of the sacredness of the whole organ.
It being this plug that you then plug back into the earth, and for your child, that's what connects them to. There's this amazing belief that that's how the child remembers what their life's mission is, because when we're born we go through the waters of forgetfulness. This is kind of in like mysticism, and that's why you don't remember like past lives or being a spirit or we're kind of born anew. But if you plug your placenta back into the earth, you are connected to that remembrance, and you're connected to all your ancestors. And lots of places they have like ancestral trees where all of the family's placentas will be buried. You just think it's so beautiful. I do think it's important for people to think about that, how valuable these placentas are. And it's like, the least thing is that they're medical waste. They're not medical waste. The worst case scenario is that it's like they're being taken and we don't know what's happening to them. And it's like, connected to both our children. So I just think, get your placenta, and if you're at home, then you've got your placenta.
Yes, that's right. Word, sister, exactly. The simplest thing is to bury your placenta, but please don't allow the system to whisk it away, make thousands out of it, and goodness knows what is happening to your baby's DNA, because that's your baby's organ. It's your baby's. It's nuts.
It's this amazing organ. I'm going to share some pictures of some little things I did with the placentas. Beautiful things where you can put some herbs and some candles and some crystals. A beautiful way of blessing that placenta and blessing your baby. And with both of my little boy and my little girl, we buried them in our garden. It felt like this amazing closure for being like, they're here now. The pregnancy's done. They're on the earth. With my little boy, we did this beautiful thing where, because obviously Mike and me, when we were younger, I don't know, our placentas were just taken. You can do this thing where you choose a crystal or a stone or anything. You can make something to represent your placenta, and you can bury your placenta in the ground so that energetically you're kind of representing, for all of us who didn't have that. So we did it with albies, which was so beautiful. We both chose literally our favourite crystals, because we quite like crystals. And we buried them with his, and then we put little,
special herby blessings and things, and just little prayers. I wrote out some of my prayers, and then we buried them with it. And it just felt like we were creating the beginnings of our own little ancestry tree, you know. And even then, I think if you move house, I just feel like you're in the earth's all connected. So at least, you know. And then we buried my little girl's placenta beside. So actually with Albie's, because he was born in the winter, his did go in the freezer for 6 months because I think the ground was too hard. But I did feel a bit like, oh no, she's really cold in the freezer. We need to get her in the ground. But yeah, it's just amazing. And actually, yeah, so something I did this time with Shellie, because Shellie arrived after my baby had been born, but I hadn't birthed placenta yet. And I really wanted to do some prints. And I'd thought about it with the first birth, but I think I just didn't get around to it because, you know, you just had a baby. But this time I'd got the paper ready. And that's all you really need, actually. I got some big bits of paper ready, and then Shellie really sweetly helped me just like basically you just plop the placenta on the paper and see, you know, and position it. And I'm so glad I have those now, because I love the symbol of the tree of life, and you both mentioned it in the last episode. I just think it's so profound, and at least having that imprint of this amazing organ that did so much. And I've seen ones where you can kind of draw into it and stuff, but yeah, it just feels, you know, birth memories with that.
It's so nice to hear these things, and how the traditions and even things that you have, you know, the ceremonies that you have done yourself, made things, you've thought of ideas that help so that wonderful connectedness. And it's just, yeah, I really love that you spoke about the birth untethered and being the untethering from this kind of outside influence of things, and actually just being tethered to yourself and what feels right for you as a person, and that you can take the things that you need, which you've also touched on, but also say, no, I don't need those things. I have what I need. And just to hear that your whole experience of life and death and birth and parenthood is, you are just encompassing the whole thing. You are nurturing your body, your soul, your relationship with your partner, with your children, with your friends, you know, and just how that connectedness, it shines through you and your art and your thought process. And I hope that everybody listening to this can take a bit of the magic that you have for themselves and grow and everybody feel that sort of sense of connectedness of everything, just life and death flowing together, and it actually not being this scary, horrible thing, but actually this journey of learning and discovery and enlightenment and wonder. You've just explained everything so beautifully. It's really lovely. Thank you, Amelia. And I really would like to, if you're okay, I'd like you to touch on a post that you made on Instagram, actually, about after the birth of your children, a thought that came to you about feeding, about breastfeeding your babies.
Thank you both so much. I think there's so much remembrance that we're trying to bring through, and both of you are so part of that. And most of us have had these kind of ancestral wisdom lineages broken, so we have to kind of connect to them through more of an intuitive way, and becoming a mum is definitely an opportunity to strengthen that connection. It's been my experience anyway. With the breast milk, it's interesting because it's connected actually to milk, because milk is made from blood. And I just wanted to say on what you were saying as well, this thing about blood, is that, again, it's like this super taboo thing, and there's a whole rabbit hole there, obviously, as well, about our periods and like da-da-da. And actually how our blood as women is literally the most sacred liquid in the world. So deep in the mysteries how that goes, but
yeah, tell me about it.
There's this amazing prophecy, and I can't remember which culture it's from, but there's this saying that's basically something like, when the women return the blood to the earth, we will know peace, or it's something like that. I've not said it completely right, but it's this amazing thing about our blood returning to the earth. And what I found was there was this amazing cyclical thing for me of when I had my miscarriages, and I'd kind of honoured that blood, and then having the placentas going in the ground, this feeling of that death was a literal rebirth, because now my babies are here. But we also had this thing, like you were saying, is so full of stem cells, it literally nourishes the earth. So you can plant a tree, but also we put our bloody towels in the bath to wash them. The bath water was all bloody. So I said to Mike, because I started doing it with my periods again, that's a whole other thing we talk about, but he put the bloody water and fed all of our house plants. And literally, we're not very good plant parents. So we've got a peace lily that's like, she's never had any flowers. Like all of our houseplants are a bit sad because I forget to water them quite a lot. But he watered them with this blood from the birth, and literally like a week later, our peace lily had a lily emerge on it, you know? And this is actually proof she's never flowered before. It's amazing when you experience it. This is the blood that builds our babies' bodies, but it symbolically heals the world, but it literally also, so you know, when there's a whole other thing with when you've got your period, if you use period pants, you can like wash it and put the water in your plants, and it's really good.
Right.
So I just wanted to say the blood thing.
So again, just to point out for anyone who's just coming into this reality, this is an inverted world that we appear to be living in right now. This mindscape that we have all co-created, where the menstrual blood is literally treated like the worst thing you could ever have on earth. Like, you know, if a woman, you know, leaks during her period, she's like a pariah. You know, when the religions that would prevent a woman from coming to the worship place because she's bleeding, the women that are prevented from worship because they're immediately postpartum,
It's when women are most holy.
believe the opposite.
Even the word blessed means blood. The word harlot means lot is blood, is womb of light. Is hara, lot is light, guys.
Okay, didn't know that.
Sacred, literally about blood. Like there's the words, it's hidden in our words, and like you said, Kemi, it inverted is the key word. This is so profound. These mysteries of our bodies it's actual magic, and it's so powerful, and we've been so disconnected from our literal power. There's a whole thing about it, how then the menopause where you become a queen because you're retaining your blood. So all of that power in the blood is then retained in you. And that's why those women would be the leaders, because they have their blood, the fire in them. Having to create your baby.
Okay, so just one more thing. So when you're pregnant, you don't shed at all your womb lining. So of course, you're going to be at your most connected and sacred to the divine.
Of course, you don't bleed because you're breastfeeding, because the blood is being turned into milk for your baby.
That's right. That's right.
I was away with my friend Emma. We went to this beautiful alchemy rose day. We were learning a little bit more about alchemical processes, and it's really interesting, and obviously not everybody's into that, but it's about this transformation from spirit into physicality. And I'd also been listening to probably your guys' podcast, or a podcast talking about what breast milk is made of and the fat percentage and everything.
Yeah, we haven't got there yet.
I'm listening to birth podcasts now, even though I'm not pregnant. Like you guys said, that whole lifetime learner thing, it's just the more you learn how little you know, and you've got to keep learning.
You're so obsessed. I just love it.
And so what I realised, I've always been interested in alchemy in my artwork, but I had this moment where I was like, wait, so there's different things that you can consume help you move up and down. So for example, when you drink alcohol, that's like taking you out of your body. That's why it's called spirits, because you are, you know, and you feel a bit, ooh, because you're kind of out of your body. And when you're hungover in the morning, you want to eat fatty foods because you're trying to get back in your body. Well, that's part of an alchemical process. So it's the same in Holy Communion, where you'll be having the blood of Christ to ascend. Basically, fat is used, and oil has been used obviously for millennia to anoint, and that is about earthing your body. I was super pregnant, and we love like tuning into all of this like learning, and I suddenly was like, wait, I need to have the rose oil in birth, because when the baby's born I can anoint her to help embody her. And then suddenly I thought, wait, no, I'm not going to anoint her with the spirit of the rose oil. I was like, our breast milk is literally fat. Our milk is an elixir to anoint them with. And then it went even deeper, where I was like, wait, it's literally their personalized, tailored anointing, because it's made of their very own blood. So if you are bringing the soul of that being finally into their body with It's made from their blood of that body.
Perfect.
And so I'm just like, okay, that
Yes.
obviously continues through breastfeeding, but even if you're not
Yes.
going to breastfeed, you can just put that milk on your baby. But no, it's actually them feeding on the colostrum. Is they're literally consuming this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's an anointing. I mean, anointing is like external, but they're being filled with divinity from your breast.
Also on the scientific research, and then also on the cultural stories. It's everywhere. It's just true. You know, it's so profound. Being a woman is just the most amazing thing.
We know what Amelia is saying is true. I was a born skeptic. I'm always cynical until something's hitting me in the face. And so with Amelia, guys out there who's saying, what's she talking about? You got to understand, have you seen the war against women breastfeeding their children? Like, why should it matter? Why should anyone care that we're breastfeeding our children? But what do in America? They get the woman back to work. They don't provide any maternity leave. They don't provide somewhere for you to express even. They don't encourage the right amount of maternity leave. They seem to have moved from follow-on milk to just advertising formula. They seem to have just suddenly moved to that. Right, so you're seeing these brand new babies being fed from a bottle. Why do you think they're so? I didn't get a single drop of colostrum or breast milk from my mother, because she was lied to and her breasts were bound. She woke up from the date rape drug to find that her breasts had been bound. So it's an inverted world.
They don't want women to have the magic. It's threatening to the patriarchy, isn't it? Because if you have connected mothers and babies and family units and communities, then people are not spending money to get happiness from outside of that. And formula companies are so unethical. You know, the things that maybe people don't know about in the history of how Nestle have behaved is just so disgusting. And I'm sure other formula companies are very much on a similar lines. You know, the CEO of Nestle doesn't think that humans have a right to water, and their profit is more important to them than the lives of babies. They purposefully sent sales reps for formula dressed as nurses to tell people in the West use formula because it's better for their babies. They gave them just enough free sachets so that their breast milk would dry up and leave the mothers without milk, without money to buy formula, and their babies died. You know, they would try to pay for the formula, have to water it down because they didn't have enough money to get enough formula, and so their babies then were getting dysentery and, you know, other kind of bugs, you know, from the water, because they were mixing the water with the formula. You know, formula powder is not sterile, and there are companies that, you know, have these bottle preparation things. So formula milk the powder is made from cow's milk, obviously dried and done in a factory. It's not sterile. You need to put boiling water in to sterilize it to stop your baby getting stomach bugs. But people don't know that, and there are things selling it so that you just put in lukewarm water so it comes out ready for your baby for convenience. So then what do? They give your baby a vaccination to stop them getting stomach bugs from the fact that you've been told. It's all about making money and not about connecting family and mothers and babies safely.
Can I just wade in? I just want to say that apart from you breastfeeding your children being one of the most ultimate acts of love and plugging you securely into your own sense of divinity and that for your baby, it's also an act of resistance. It's an act of resistance taking your child to your breast. That's not as important as you being connected with the divine and nourishing your child fully. But for those of us that are a bit upset about the way the world's going, breastfeed your child is a big middle finger to the billionaires.
Like birth, with breastfeeding those first few weeks, there is this aspect of trust where you just have to, you know, you can do the learning and that's going to help you get external support that's going to help you, but there's also, you just have to trust. My mum was like, are you sure they're getting enough? Because you can't measure it. You can't see. So you just have to trust. And again, you know, just feel, is your baby okay? You know, I was even texting Shellie, she's not doing the number of poos that are suggested. And I know it's fine, but need that reassurance. We don't fit all the guidelines all the time. You know, we're all completely unique. And I think there does have to be an aspect of trust. Keep going. And once you get through those first few weeks of breastfeeding, it's like the easiest thing because your boobs are with you. You don't need to make any milk. It's so amazing and easy. I think a lot of us are coming from experiences where we didn't have those births, we didn't have the breastfeeding, but we're having to reconnect. And humans are resilient. So I do think that people, if you don't have it, or you can't, it didn't happen for your child, or it didn't happen for you, we're so resilient. It's fine. But actually, you don't want it to just be fine. And if you have a choice and you're going to have a baby, you can do your best to make this amazing for you and your baby, you know?
And I think, Amelia, as well, what you are demonstrating is it all starts before conception. So it's doing one challenging thing after another. And it's only challenging because our society is inverted, like, is that, how many times have I said inverted? So that's why it's challenging.
Actually,
but it just starts from preconception.
In pregnancy was so chill because I had done lots of research, the first one, to work on all of my fears, and then I was pretty good. I did have, like I said, some fears and stuff, but I didn't really do much. I kept being like, oh, you don't really have to do anything. You just choose if you want to do some things.
It's still choice. And I think we had a few conversations in your first pregnancy where you were honest enough to really, you know, communicate what you were fearing, to give space to receive some information for you in your courage and intelligence and heart space to process. And I think because you were willing to put in the hard work with Albie, that's why you could kind of say for your second pregnancy that you got such amazing results whilst you were chilling, because you'd really put your shoulder to the wheel the first time.
When things were like feeling a lot for you, we would just have a chat, and you know, you'd say, I'm not really sure whether we want to be alone or whether we want to have you there. And I was lucky that I had availability, that I could be there or not depending on how you felt. And really up to the last minute, it was just like, we'll see how we feel. We think we might want you there. And then, you know, as the universe does, when I got the call, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll come and sit outside then. And I was like, oh, no, I don't, she doesn't want you coming yet. I think it's okay. I'm thinking I'm not going to get there in time then. So I just said to him very calmly, okay, well, when you want to call me, you let me know. And if anything happens whilst I'm on the way, you can just give me a call if you need someone to be there calmly to talk things through on the phone. That's fine.
Do you see what that shows again? I've just got to say, it just really just so highlights how Amelia, as a maiden, as a mother, you can alchemize a conversation. So you have the conversation and then you alchemize it into these two children that have had the most amazing births and are being nourished at your amazing breast of your amazing breast milk. Many other things. It just goes to show. So, you know, like the energy that Shellie's able to communicate to you over the phone, you turn it into real tangible blessing and abundance in your family. It's beautiful.
I think what I want to say is actually that, because lots of people might think, oh, but I don't know, my intuition isn't telling me. And I just want to say that that is kind of how intuition is. It's not as clear as when you read something that's like da 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 da. You know, it's different for all of us, and you know, sometimes it feels really strong, but sometimes you're not super sure, and that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. You're not gonna have like necessarily knowing exactly what you want for every single thing, but that doesn't mean it's a problem. Sometimes, again, like I was saying, you just have to lean into the trust of just wait and you'll know, you know, because that's kind of what I had with the second one. It was like, oh, I'm like, am I meant to have a free birth, or am I meant to have the NHS midwives this time? Like I just couldn't tell. So I just tried to really lean into, okay, we're just going to wait. And I was going to have Shellie. And when she was coming, I was like, oh my God, she's actually coming. But I kind of felt like I do want Shellie to come, but actually we're going to do this bit just us. And it feels good. But before that, I didn't know. Perfect. It was like, then you look back and you're like, oh, I did know. But it wasn't so clear, because that's just not the way it works. And I just think that's the way the world is. It's like there's data, which is factual, but there's also things that we just can't know. We don't know everything. Like, so, and there's some things, you know, that we're not ready to fully know, and you know, it's not set in stone, so you just have to kind of go with it
and trust. Yes, it's a lot.
What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this.
Do you have anything else you want to ask Amelia, or Amelia, do you have anything else that you want to say?
Ooh, no, I, my head's spinning.
I'm feeling woozy right now.
So good. That's why my head's spinning. Honestly.
I need to do some grounding.
Yeah, we're up the mountain, so yeah, and I need to ground some too.
But thank you both so much for having me. It's so cool. This is like the divine feminine rising is linked to this. This is the women remembering. This is the women remembering about their periods. This is the women remembering the truth about just birthing their babies, the truth about our wombs, and the truth about our blood and our children and our lineages and our sovereignty. And we've got to reclaim it, and that does just start with reclaiming it for you and your children.
And the ripples go out from that through your children, through people you speak with, through their then experiences from that. And it's really, really wonderful. I'm so grateful for you coming on the podcast and sharing your journey with us today. A really big thank you to you. And just before we go, I thought I'd let everybody know I had a call with a lady yesterday, and she said that she had told her friends about the podcast, you know, those ripples going out, and that her friend had decided not to have a cesarean that she thought she was going to have because of the podcast, and had a wonderful physiological birth. How cool is that? How cool is that? So sometimes I think it feels very much like we are trying to stem this tide of industrial medicalized birth, of the squashing of humans' rights, of women's rights, of babies' rights, of families' rights, and that we are really stemming a giant tide. But we are making ripples, and you have made some amazing ripples today. Thank you very much for being with us today, Amelia, and everybody. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You can sign up to the Birth Untethered mailing list from the link in the show notes, become an Untethered Rebel, support the show, and join the growing community that meet together online each month to share collective wisdom, support one another, and also to receive extra resources that supplement podcast episodes. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and should not be construed as medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and may not